Cop humiliates single dad, regrets it after learning the man's story. It was an ordinary Wednesday morning when Officer Mark Thompson, a seasoned cop known for his no-nonsense approach, found himself patrolling a quiet suburban neighborhood. He had seen his fair share of minor traffic infractions, loud neighbors, and petty arguments. But what he wasn't prepared for that day was the encounter that would challenge his assumptions about people and teach him a lesson in humility he would never forget. Jason Carter, a hard-working single dad, was on his way to drop off his 8-year-old son, Ethan, at school. The usual routine was something Jason had grown accustomed to: waking up early, preparing breakfast, getting Ethan ready, and making sure he didn't miss the school bus. But this particular morning, things didn't go as smoothly as usual. As Jason was backing out of his driveway, a police car pulled up behind him, signaling for him to stop. At first, he thought it was a routine check, but when Officer Thompson stepped out, he could see that things were about to take a turn. The officer's expression was stern, and his voice was firm. "Do you know how fast you were going, sir?" Officer Thompson asked, glaring at Jason. Jason was caught off guard. He hadn't been speeding, but the officer's tone made it clear that he was ready to issue a ticket. What followed was an exchange that would escalate quickly, as Jason tried to explain his situation, only to be met with disdain. Officer Thompson didn't care for excuses, and he treated Jason as though he was just another irresponsible driver, until the truth came to light and the entire situation took a dramatic turn. The neighborhood was quiet, with rows of neatly manicured lawns and well-kept homes. Officer Mark Thompson had patrolled this area many times before, but today, something felt different. The early morning sun shone brightly as he cruised down the street, scanning for any potential violations. He was a man who prided himself on maintaining order and making sure the rules were followed. He was respected by his colleagues and feared by the local residents, especially when it came to traffic enforcement. When Officer Thompson spotted Jason's car reversing from the driveway, he noticed something that caught his attention. The vehicle seemed to be moving quickly for a residential street. Without hesitation, he hit the sirens and pulled up behind the car, ready to confront the driver. Jason, in his early 30s, was a typical dad, tired from long hours at work and juggling the responsibilities of raising his son on his own. His wife had left when Ethan was just a baby, and since then, Jason had been doing his best to provide for his son. It wasn't easy, but Jason loved being a father and would do anything to make sure Ethan had a better life than he had growing up. As Jason shifted the car into park and rolled down the window, he was greeted with a sharp command from Officer Thompson. "License and registration," the officer said curtly. Jason fumbled for a moment before handing over his papers, wondering why he was being stopped. "Is there a problem, officer?" he asked, trying to stay calm. "You were speeding through this neighborhood. Do you know how fast you were going?" Officer Thompson asked again, his tone harsh. Jason tried to explain. "No, officer, I wasn't speeding. I was just backing out of the driveway. I didn't even realize I was moving that fast. I'm in a hurry because I need to get my son to school." But Officer Thompson wasn't listening. "Everyone's in a hurry, buddy. That doesn't give you the right to break the law," he snapped. "I'll be issuing you a ticket, and if you have any objections, you can take it up in court." Jason felt his chest tighten. He knew he wasn't in the wrong, but the officer's attitude was beginning to make him feel small. He tried to remain calm, but frustration was building inside him. As he tried to explain his situation once more, Officer Thompson interrupted, cutting him off with a dismissive tone. "Enough with the excuses," the officer said, scoffing. "You don't get special treatment just because you're a single dad. You're still responsible for following the law, no matter how busy you are." Jason's face reddened. He had heard people make assumptions about him before, people who saw him as just another struggling single father. But this was different. He didn't deserve to be treated like this, especially by someone who didn't know anything about his life or his struggles. The tension between Officer Thompson and Jason continued to rise. The officer's stern attitude and dismissive remarks pushed Jason further to the edge. He was doing his best to remain composed, but it was hard not to feel insulted by the officer's condescending tone. "I'm just trying to get my son to school, officer," Jason said, his voice shaking with frustration. "Please, I haven't done anything wrong," but Officer Thompson wasn't having it. "You're wasting my time with your excuses," he retorted. Maybe if you spent more time paying attention to the rules, you wouldn't be in this situation." Jason's heart raced. It wasn't just the ticket he was worried about. It was the way he was being treated. He knew that the officer was looking down on him, judging him for something he hadn't even done. As a single father, he already faced so much judgment from society. He didn't need it from the police, too. Ethan, sitting quietly in the back seat, looked up from his homework. He could sense the tension in the air and knew something wasn't right. Jason tried to reassure his son, but he couldn't shake the feeling that the situation was spiraling out of control. The officer was about to issue the ticket when Jason, feeling defeated, finally snapped. "You don't know anything about me," he said, his voice rising. "You don't know what it's like to struggle every single day, to raise a child alone and to work 2 jobs just to make ends meet. But that doesn't give you the right to treat me like I'm some criminal." For a moment, Officer Thompson paused. He had never had someone talk to him like that before, especially not in such a vulnerable, raw way. But before he could respond, his radio crackled with a new message. "Officer Thompson, we've got a report of a missing person. You're needed in the next block." With a frustrated sigh, Officer Thompson glanced at Jason one last time before turning toward his squad car. "This isn't over," he muttered, before walking away. Jason, feeling both defeated and angry, drove away with his son, not knowing that this encounter would soon come full circle. The next day, Officer Thompson was called into his superior's office. He had handled a lot of traffic stops in his career, but the encounter with Jason Carter had stayed with him. There was something about the way Jason had spoken his vulnerability, his frustration, that made the officer feel uneasy. He couldn't stop thinking about it. As he walked into his boss's office, Officer Thompson was surprised to see a man sitting there waiting. The man had an air of authority about him, and as soon as the officer sat down, the man introduced himself. "Officer Thompson, I'm Samuel Carter, the father of Jason Carter," the man said, his voice calm but firm. "I understand you had a run-in with my son yesterday." The name Carter caught Officer Thompson off guard. He hadn't expected to be sitting in front of a man like this. Samuel Carter was a well-known businessman and a successful entrepreneur with a reputation for giving back to the community. He had done charity work for years, funding local initiatives, and had become a respected figure in the city. "What do you mean, sir?" Officer Thompson stammered. "Jason is my son," Samuel continued. "He's been working tirelessly to provide for his family, raising his son alone after his wife passed away 2 years ago. He's not the kind of person you think he is, and the way you treated him yesterday, well, that's something I don't take lightly." Officer Thompson felt the weight of the situation sink in. He hadn't known Jason's background, but now that he did, he couldn't shake the feeling of regret. His initial assumptions had been wrong. Jason wasn't just some irresponsible single dad. He was a hardworking man doing everything he could for his family. "I didn't know," Officer Thompson murmured, his face turning red with embarrassment. "Well, you should have taken the time to understand before you made assumptions," Samuel said, his tone sharp but not unkind. "Jason's a good man, and he deserves respect." The next day, Officer Thompson personally sought out Jason to apologize for his behavior. He found him at a local park sitting with Ethan as they enjoyed the afternoon together. "Mr. Carter," Officer Thompson began, his voice apologetic, "I owe you an apology. I didn't know the full story and I treated you unfairly yesterday. I was wrong, and I deeply regret how I acted." Jason looked up, surprised by the officer's sudden change in tone. He had expected some kind of confrontation or, at best, an indifferent apology. But seeing the genuine remorse in Officer Thompson's eyes made him pause. "I didn't deserve to be treated that way," Jason said, his voice calm but firm. "But I appreciate that you're taking responsibility for it." "I've learned a valuable lesson," Officer Thompson admitted. "I judged you without knowing your story, and that was wrong. I shouldn't have assumed anything about you." Jason nodded. "It's not easy being a single parent, but we do what we have to do for our kids. You might not have understood that, but I hope now you do." The two men shook hands, and as they did, Officer Thompson promised to do better in the future, no longer assuming things about people based on their appearance or their circumstances. The encounter between Officer Thompson and Jason Carter is a reminder of the importance of empathy and understanding. It's easy to make judgments based on assumptions, about a person's job, their family situation, or their social status, but doing so can lead to unfair treatment and missed opportunities for connection. The true lesson here is that everyone has a story. Jason's story wasn't what Officer Thompson had assumed, and it wasn't until he took the time to learn more that he realized the error of his ways. By treating others with dignity and respect, without making snap judgments, we can foster a more compassionate and just society. At the heart of this story is the reminder that every individual, regardless of their background or circumstances, deserves to be treated with kindness and understanding. No one should be judged based on assumptions. Everyone has a unique journey, and it's only by listening to and understanding each other that we can truly make the world a better place.